is the Motovation Podcast, hosted by Laurie Joy Kingwell and Krissy Vann. That's me. And we're taking you on a little off-roading.
And every single week, we're going to be joined by our dope friend, Richelle from True Grit Moto.
Woo! Hey, I floss.
And every week, we are going to ask each other stupid questions, and we're going to answer them. And why, you may ask? Because we can. All right, this is your Motovation
Off-road edition.
Time travel. Got a little time travel question.
Okay.
If you could time travel and go in the past and warn your younger self about something that's going to take place in their life, a little bit ridiculous or embarrassing, but you can't help them. They've got to go through it. You're going to go through it no matter what. So you're going back in time to essentially give them just like a little bit of a, like, here's what you're going to expect. And here's some advice on how to navigate it. What would it be?
Okay, so we know I actually struggle with memory of my youth, so I actually don't have a ton to draw off. But something that did come to mind was, so my birthday's in March, so I was one of the earliest people to be able to go for their driver's test. And like, small city, like everyone kind of knows it's a big deal. We're also a car-centric city. So it's like, if you're the person that gets to drive, this is a game changer for a lot of people and a ripple effect. And so we had graduated licensing similar to BC. It's just called all something different for the levels. So I was going for the one where I would be allowed then to drive on my own without a chaperone. Big fucking deal. Plus, it's my birthday. And of course, I just opened my big mouth like, yeah, I'm going today. It's going to be amazing. Blah, blah, blah. I failed that test leaving the parking lot. I full out turned right in front of a car. It honked like it was a big, like, fuck you, like from the driver behind me situation.
Oh my God.
Even though like that's an automatic fail, because there's things you can do so many times, and then there's other things where they're like, sorry, it's not going to happen for you, but you have to continue the whole test. So it's like I made it through, and I get so nervous for things. Like if I had to do a public speaking thing, no problem. If I have to actually apply a skill and be tested on it, I get very nervous and overwhelmed for those things. Yeah. Less now because I know how to work through that, but didn't have the tools then. So I do the whole test. I'm like shaking, and inside I'm like, please, I hope so much. And then I like cried to the person that failed me, being like, oh God. And then I had to go back to school in like the puddle of shame because everyone's like, yeah, license. And because I had said so much beforehand, then I had to like feel the shame from everyone else. And at that, I mean, you know, you're 16. Felt like a big deal at 16.
It is a big deal.
The same birthday as my boyfriend. And so like he got his, I didn't get mine. Yeah.
Oh. So what's your advice? Yeah. What would you say to her?
Before turning right.
Right. But you can't help her avoid it. So you're like giving her that like lowdown of like, look, this is going to happen. This is what you got to know. So you're not as
get your license 3 weeks later.
There it is. Yes.
No, here's what I would say. Don't tell people that you're going for the test before you go for the test.
Be prepared
before you fucking earned that win. That is a lesson in life anyways.
Shame.
You just throw holy water as you did it too?
Yeah. I just felt mortified. Like it's like wasn't even about the license anymore, right? You're just worried about everyone's opinion of the fact you didn't.
Well, I tell you right now, when I got my license for the first time, my mom was like, okay, it's time for her to drive. And a bee flew in and hit me and landed in my crotch. And I smoked the car in front of me driving out of the parking lot as well.
Oh, shit.
I'm sorry.
She was like, what the fuck?
Were you like, was that your driver's test or you were learning?
Like, just got my license. And my mom was like, okay, you can drive us home. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, she had a red Jeep with gold trim, like God. Barbie, literally like Barbie. And she's blonde, Barbie looking. She's so cute looking. And I look left and I look right and I go and then a bee goes, lands in my crotch. And I'm like, and I slammed on the gas and fucking smoked the car in front of me.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So that happened. But, you know, we live, we learn. Mine would probably be at a very, at a very exposed age when you're getting your like hair, like your pubes and your like hairs coming in.
Right. Yes.
That there was this one time in gym class and my shorts were sticking to me because you don't put lotion on your body.
I'm feeling this in my soul.
You don't know yet. And so we were all playing basketball and I'm like, oh, my shorts won't stop sticking to me. And they're like riding my leg and they're like showing all my new leg pubes. And, and my like teacher's assistant comes up and she's like, here, take some lotion. And she puts lotion in my hand and I put it on my shorts, not on my legs. I like took my shorts.
What do you mean you put it on your shorts?
Oh, like on the inside?
On the inside of my shorts, because I thought you were supposed to do it on your leg. And as I'm doing it, it was a full embarrassment moment. I show off my downstairs bush, like as if there's an upstairs bush. And not only that, I'm lotioning my fucking shorts instead of my legs. And everybody's watching. And one of the other girls, and I think her name was Crystal at the time.
Best.
She goes, oh, no, your legs. No, your legs. And I was like, what? Because I'm looking, and she's like, no, you put the lotion on your legs. And I was like, oh. And then at the end of that
story, this is one of my favorites because I'm picturing this all happening and watching you
so bad.
Just the teenager, right?
The teacher's assistant goes, has your mom talked to you about?
No, she didn't.
Yeah. Have you had the talk about, like of age hair? And I was like, am I?
You're like, does it look like we had the talk about of age hair?
Lady? Also, what is she insinuating? That you should be shaving it? Like, what is she trying to say? What's there to talk about?
That I wasn't wearing underwear. I wasn't wearing underwear.
Wait, why weren't you wearing underwear?
Because it was breezy, easy breezy, beautiful.
Sorry. They're vacuuming outside. Stella's losing her mind. Stand by.
It was bad.
This just gets so when you were lifting your shorts, was like how high were you lifting?
Well, because I was trying to get the short because it was all the way up to the top, and I didn't notice. I didn't think about it. I wasn't aware. And Ginger.
Did you accidentally like give a little bit of a show? Like you weren't. There was no lip action, right? It was just more the like growth.
You couldn't see lip past that forest. Are you kidding me?
It wasn't like. Well, at first I was thinking it was the initial growth, not the like.
It's in hot though. Like I distinctly remember. Whoa, memory unlock. Grade 8, going to a pool party, and I just remember looking at and being like, "Holy fuck, there's a bush!" And then I like. Speed shaved. I don't, what's funny? It's like, how do you even learn that? Like, I would just like shame. And then I shaved her away.
Shame.
Did you shave up or down? Like, did you do the accident where you went against?
Oh, it was a hack job.
Oh,
like,
God.
I was.
Yeah. It would have been
it because like I didn't want to go to the party and call in Staples to see.
Mine grew the undercarriage, but not the front part. So I was very shocked. It was like one time I was like doing somewhere, I was like scratching my crotch, and then I was like, "What on earth?" And I just started like pulling at the hairs. Was like, "When? What? But when?" And then it was like, but there was nothing really overly on the front, so it was like two different worlds.
You had the mullet.
I had a mullet. I had a mullet. Oh, and then so that's why when you were like, it just went like a bush and it was just kind of there. I was like, mine was a strange growth.
I could imagine you just laying at the beach, like on your stomach, just like legs out. Cause you're like, oh, there's no beaver up top. There's no bush here.
Not, no.
But then everybody down beach is like, whoa.
Right? Does she know? How comfortable is she in her skin? Shame. God forbid as a female have body hair. Shame.
That's like the automatic emotion that comes up when I'm like, I remember just feeling shame.
So I would tell my younger self just to be prepared. I'd be like, hey, listen, it's cool. Bushes are cool, man.
Yeah. And also just like lotions for skin.
Lotions for skin, not for shorts. Okay.
Lotions for skin. It says right on the body or on the body on the bottle.
New tattoo, lotions for skin.
Lotions for skin. Spoiler alert, lotions for skin.
Lotions for
Next
skin.
tattoo. Amazing. Mine would be my first kiss. You know how you watch the Dawson's Creek, you watch all the shows, you can't wait.
Sorry, they keep vacuuming and hitting my door.
Don't worry,
really
Stella. Let it happen.
God. Take her to the SPCA.
Do you want me to tell you how I got rid of Marley after he had poop on his tail?
The window went down a little further than he anticipated.
Yeah. I threw a bone.
Like, how dirty is the hallway? Anyway.
How many dust bunnies is there?
Already, lady.
Right? So the first kiss, a lot of you're so excited. You're so excited to have that really romantic moment. And I was anyways. I was a big romantic even back when I was young, and I was so excited. And I had this new boyfriend, and he was older. He went to the other school. I was grade 7, so I would have been 12 years old. And he was 13, and he went to the high school.
Oh my God.
Cute.
Cool guy.
And I knew he wanted to tongue kiss me. And we were at the yeah. And I was like, oh, it's happening. It happened all my other friends were doing much more than tongue kissing. I'll tell you that for free. Yeah, scary. And I was just entering the land of maybe I might put my tongue in his mouth. And so we went to the hockey game in town, the big hockey game. And I remember on the intermission, you'd walk to the 7-Eleven, and we all walked our friends and his friends. And it was you knew it was happening. I remember just shitting my pants, walking around the convenience store. And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to do it, but I'm super nervous. And they were like, you can die. You can die. I know you can. And I was like, yeah, okay, I can. So we walk to this elementary school that's right beside the rink. And he's like, hey, want to go for a walk? And I was like, yeah, okay. And we both knew what was happening. And I remember us standing, and we were like, okay, let's do it. I took out my gum, put it down.
Classic.
Yeah. And I was like, I'm ready for this. So we go in for the kiss, and it was tongue, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Super aggressive, super horrific. I remember the whole time being like, oh no.
People still kiss like that at an older age.
No, that's horrible. Stop it. If you're one of them, stop it.
Tongue.
So, and then
was today years old. No.
You learned something new with off-road. So we walked back to the friends, and I was just I was ill, literally ill, because I was I don't want to ever do that again. I don't want to ever actually see him again. I want to be swallowed. And I just remember leaning against the wall at the rest of the hockey game. And my friends were like, how was it? And I was like, we'll talk about it later. And then just being horrified, breaking up with him, I think the next day or the day after. I just remember being oh no. I was it was horrible. It was one of the worst things I've ever done. So I would look back and say to myself, just so you know, you're not going to know how to do it Dawson Creek style for a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
It's going to be bad, but that's okay. It's supposed to be a little bad at first, and that's okay. But don't go back to the rink, go straight home. Have your mom waiting in the car, and you just get in the car and you just go home. Just crawl into a ball and know that it will get better. It will get a lot better. And but I still look back, and it's still that burnt memory, core memory in your brain where it was oh, Lord have mercy.
I don't remember my first kiss. I'm so jealous. Do you remember your first kiss, Krissy? I don't.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Curtis collared.
Curtis.
As it does. It's funny. I actually have a convenience store kiss that went bad as well. That would have been with Brian Jameson, who ironically lives on the island, and I saw in Adult Life. And I think I ruined his life for a bit because it was in front of the Avondale, which is what we call our convenience stores in Niagara. And it was very a fish, just
Oh God.
And so I was it was like a guppy, and then people that got around, unfortunately, that he was.
Yeah,
well,
so
if you're
did
gonna
mine.
guppy.
So did mine. And then he got really mean. Him and his buddy, they like called me and were threatening me as like, this is NB style. When a guy gets rejected back there as a teenager, they're not kind about it. They get real aggressive and real like threatening mean.
What?
Yes.
For what?
Yes.
What is he threatening you with?
Because I said he was a bad kisser. Yeah.
Well,
threatening that like I better not come to parties or else. And
he's probably still sitting there like, fuck that bitch.
Oh yeah.
Peaked in high school.
we became like kosher acquaintance friends later because we went to the same.
You identify a relationship as kosher, like it's not great.
No. Sounds like the lesbian community, honestly. You're not allowed to party anymore because you kiss bad. What, bitch? What'd you say to me?
Dude, right? Like, God forbid. Yeah, it was like I was scared to go to freaking the new junior or my new high school afterwards.
Junior, that's what I thought you were instead of new.
What?
Nude.
I was afraid to be nude. Fucked up shit. So yeah, that didn't make me too excited to kiss again either. Cause I was like, so if it goes bad and goes wrong and you mention it, you get threatened.
Yeah.
That's bullshit.
Just kidding. I made out all over the land.
Please tell me the kisses got better.
Oh, so much better. I had some great ones. I had some great ones.
Creeks. You guys remember Dawson's Creek was a thing? I remember being really young watching Dawson's Creek and Abbotsford.
I'm so horny watching it.
And I would like play with my boobs, being like, "What is going on?" And I'd like watch Dawson's Creek, and the mailman would come up, and he like looked at me one time, and I was like, put my hands down, like total shame.
Holy water, shame.
All the mailmans out in the world wondering why they only watch Dawson's Creek porn.
Yes.
I feel like I just got this thing for it.
Ew.
Right?
Ew.
Yep. Those are the days.
Well, we're going to possibly transition to a funny or wholesome note. What is like a story that a grandparent or great grandparent, if you had them, has shared with you that like is one of their life stories that had a little bit of an impact or hilarity to it? You know how I kind of got this idea because Laurie and I ended up trapped. Well, not trapped is the word, but in a very long story of an older gentleman who was just full of life.
Oh, blessed. Yeah, bless his heart.
But then it makes you think, you're like, all of these people are like decades of lives lived and generally have like pivotal moments they share. So what's one that's been imparted or shared with you by?
I mean, like as some of you guys may know, I cut my grandpa's hair once a month.
Yes, I love it.
And he's the only grandparent that's still alive out of all my family. And he's, ever so slightly losing it, but he is so kind and so funny. And he's definitely like, like I remember when I bought my one partner home and she was like really tall, Megan. And he was like, "Whoa, aren't you tall?" And he just, like she was taller than him, but he was still like, happy to hug. He wasn't inappropriate or anything, but he just like makes these weird comments sometimes, right? But every time I go to cut his hair, he tells us the same stories. Doesn't matter who you are,
right?
Who I'm bringing by, right? It's the same stories. Bridget, his ex-girlfriend, was in the loony bin. She's now kicked it. He constantly was wheeling and dealing. And this is the one thing that that resonates with my pops is he is like, as long as you're willing to help others, they will help you. It's always the same message back and forth. He's like, down back in the day when we were pulling sand out of this one spot and we needed to put it somewhere, these guys needed some steel framing, so I bartered and I got the framing and they took the sand. And kid, like that's how you do it. You wheel and deal, you bargain it. And I will always post it on Instagram because it's the same stories. And he smokes, then he looks kind of like ominous into the abyss, and he's missing all his teeth, and he goes, "Yep, those were the days, didn't pay for nothing." And it's the same shit, and it's just so funny. And I do that now. I don't know, untrained, I did it, and now I know that I'm just like him. So that's my thing.
That does sound,
I love that.
Yeah,
I also really enjoy when you share haircut day. I think I message you every time because I'm like, I just love this. What a moment to have. Because I have no living grandparents. I haven't had them for God, so long. So I was just like, that's pretty cool. Even if you are hearing the same stories every time, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I film it every time.
They I'm same. My grandfathers were both passed away. I'm actually named after my one grandfather, Lawrence, but everyone called him Laurie. And then but they passed away before I was born. And then my grandmothers, so it was a bit like, so there was never anything that was like really said or like takeaways or moments that like either of my grandparents were kind of those people that shared those things. But I very much learned from both of my grandmothers by kind of like knowing their life stories to a certain extent and then watching how they navigated life and then taking like things that I thought were badass about them and that were a part of me and then trying to like enhance that. And then also the thing about them that like was, you could see kind of kept them from their life. And that was also within me that I was like, oh, you've got to look at that. And so like an example would be like my one grandma on my mom's side, who I grew up most around in Saskatchewan on the farm. Her mom died when she was a baby or like a little girl, and her dad worked away. And so she was raised by like the farm families that were nearby. And so, and she didn't get married until she was in her like mid 30s, which was really late back then, right?
For that time period.
Yeah, had 5 kids, which one of them she had at 48 years old.
Whoa.
Which is crazy back then, which she would never talk about her age. And it makes sense because like most of her pictures, I'm like, why did grandma always kind of look like a grandma? And it was because she was so much older when she had kids. And so she never admitted her age because it was one of those things where, so that, you know, for the obvious reason back then. So one of the things with grandma is like, she is a tough cookie. Like she just gets shit done. Like I remember even once my grandpa passed away, when they were, well, she would have been in her early 50s and like stayed on the farm for the rest of her life and like always got dressed. Like anytime we went out, grandma was in her blouse and her vest and her, like, she was always, you know, ready for the day and never complained. It was always things, but she also was like, not cold, but like you could never really get that close to grandma because of that, like never having that from growing up sort of thing, right? Was it deeply in love with my grandpa, but even as like a mom, there was like, she loved big time, but didn't give her whole self. And so I have looked at that and been like, allow yourself to soften because yes, you know, be badass and strong and all those things and like independent and whatever else, but let people in because they miss out on big parts of yourself. So that was like very much watching my grandma. And then my gran on my dad's side, she was really vivacious and really bubbly and big personality, but she had deep mental illness and OCD. And I think probably likely, it's you know, where you switch from like really joyful to really sad. I can't
bipolar.
And I don't mean to diagnose her. She definitely had OCD without a doubt. Like she'd bump her butt on the elevator before we had to get out and she'd fold things 10 times and click her tongue and light switches and everything. And I just kind of was like along for the ride as a kid. So the other thing that was so like she had this big, beautiful personality. And so she was extremely charismatic. She was all these wonderful things. So the thing that I carried from her over was I was very much of like, I saw how happy she made people. And I'm actually named after her as well. Joy is her name. So I'm Laurie Joy.
Oh my goodness. And I love it.
She was so vivacious and she would, and I picked up from her. I call anyone that I don't know their name. And even if I do know their name, I call them love. Hey, love. It's just part of now habit. She called everyone lovey. And I remember as a kid, I watched her do that. And I saw how warm it felt for people. And I felt warm watching it happen. And then that was something that as I got older, I started just doing. And
you kept that. Yeah.
I kept that. And I also, my own mental illness, and I used to have OCD as a kid. I like got real, like tackled that shit because I also saw how that was really detriment to so many of her relationships, including like ones with her kids and neighbors and whoever was around her. There was just always an issue in a big way everywhere she went. And so it wasn't necessarily that they said anything, but it absolutely was like watching them and then recognizing the like generational effect that comes through not only in our DNA, but just in like how we all kind of hand cycles down. Is I was like, what do I want to take from these women, and what do I want to heal within these women in the next generation to come? So those are them.
Cool. I love that.
I know. I always like to reflect, on that generation. If you've ever had access in your life to speak with any members, because it's a big part of who you are. Mine are more so anecdotal stories, but I just appreciated very much. My dad's dad was like a little bit like he would just do what he needed to do to get shit done, and a little shysty in ways. So my grandmother didn't know. He was 5 years younger than her. He was like a teenager still, and she was in her 20s, and they were at a dance when he first met her, and she was there with another gentleman. And of course, in that time period, it's very courting, etc. But he was so charismatic, etc., and quite literally swept her off her feet. And she didn't find out later that he was 5 years younger. I think he was like 17. And then they obviously came up together during war period, and they lived in Europe at the time. My grandfather didn't fight. He actually ended up in a concentration camp. But as that was all going down, like previous to that, I guess there would be like checkpoints or things, and you have all your belongings, and they had like hand me down. I mean, if you think about that time too, whether there's like family keepsakes or heirlooms or watches, money, your valuables, and like people would just loot your valuables, right? So he took my grandmother's pads, like menstrual products. I don't know what they looked like in, I guess, what would this be, like 40s at that point? But like covered the whole little luggage thing with all her supplies. And so when they opened it up, the person actually got embarrassed, and he was just like, oh, my wife's having a very difficult time, And they just shut it up, and he got all the things smuggled through where he wasn't supposed to smuggle through. So I was like, well done. And then another one that's just a funny thing that I learned recently, because my great grandfather I never met, is just how much we had in common. So he used to do the voices for Paramount when there were movie pictures with just the audio over top. He was the narrator voice for that.
Whoa.
And then in the late 50s, there was a show on CBC called Front Page Challenge, which was like this game show thing. And for 2 seasons, he was a host on that, which I was like,
holy shit.
My
crazy
uncle just started to like go back and put everything together, which he knew a little bit about this history, but I didn't, because my family's like close but not close. And I was just like, that is wild. Apparently he had a face more for radio, and so didn't last. Like he didn't translate in that medium on camera. But I was like, that's kind of wild to think that we went down a really similar path, never met in life. It's also funny to think, because that side of the family had a lot of money in Toronto at the time. And I'm like, what the fuck happened, everybody? They were like one of these big families in Toronto, and then they were not, because none of that generational wealth went.
We have got, like, got to go down that rabbit hole and find out this curiosity. That's shit's so fascinating.
I'm like, who's got the dollars?
Who's got it? Somebody's got it.
Real estate in this city, and no, didn't happen for the rest of us. But anyways, I was like, it's kind of cool when you look at your past. And I appreciate it's a lot of work for the uncle that's actually doing some digging, because for me, I'm like, I knew nothing about that side. You know, it's like my grandparents, as I say, like they all passed in my early teens, and you don't think to ask those questions at that time.
Yeah.
If you have living grandparents, ask them the things you want to know now.
Or ask your parents, like, even just like, I asked my dad more questions about my grandparents, and he started telling me the stories of like how grandma and grandpa ended up back at the farm. Like grandma, like which makes sense of why she was always really dressed to the nine at the farm when no one was going to see her. She had no desire to come back. They had moved away. They were gone. And my great uncle wasn't doing very well, and he had the farm. And so he needed more support. And he was like one of those guys, never married, was never in a relationship. And he had physical ailments. So there was a bit of like self-consciousness. So my grandfather and grandma, the one that had out the kids later, came back to the farm, and grandma did not want to live on a farm, be a farm wife. So there was like, she was kind of like, had to make the most of this life being a farm. So she was like a bit of like the Green Gables or whatever that show was.
In that era, it's not like her as a woman would have a say in the decision either, whether she liked it or not, right?
Not likely, you know? And so it was the like, again, too, having to let go of this life that you wanted and like holding desperately to it in her own way. But like, you also realize too, where she hardened a bit, or she had to just keep everything bottled. Like, can you imagine like finally, you know, growing up, not in your own family and other farm families, finally getting out to the city, finally being able to go, and then being like back to the farm a couple miles from where you grew up, and like in your like city clothes, and you're like, how the fuck did I get back here?
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, and it's like one of those things that like, well, it was the best for the family, but you're like, but is it? I'm part of the family, and it's not best for me right now. But it's one of those things that like at the time, you know.
Hey guys, I gotta
go.
poop.
No. Remember what we talked about, making sure to ask permission?
Yeah.
I gotta go so bad.
Go poop. I gotta pee real bad too.
You just went off-roading with the Motovation Podcast, hosted by Laurie Joy Kingwell and myself, Krissy Vann.
And of course, a special thank you to Richelle from True Grit Moto.
Whoop, boss it.
Never miss an episode by hitting like or subscribe. Connect with us on Instagram at Motovation Podcast, and visit our website at themotovation.com. And in the meantime, full pegs, full throttle.
I think this is good though. It's like healthy, you know, like people will be like, oh my God, I don't floss.
Oh, it's going to be so hard not to laugh to get through this intro.